Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
A major twist just months before the high-profile murder trial of accused killer Luigi Mangione. His attorney now mounting a psychiatric defense, arguing Mangione was under extreme emotional disturbance and not in control of himself when he allegedly killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione in court Wednesday as the judge revealed the new defense strategy and ordered Mangione's team to turn over all of his psychiatric records immediately.
For too long, NATO has been a paper tiger and a one-way street. No more. And that's what the Hague Summit is all about. That's what defense spending commitments are all about, transforming NATO back into a real military alliance that's focused on hard power and real deterrence, a NATO 3.0, modeled on the NATO 1.0 that won the Cold War, with our allies actually taking the lead in Europe's conventional defense.
President Trump's pick to lead the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh, is leaving interest rates unchanged for now. In his first policy decision as Fed chair, Warsh announced that interest rates will remain in the current range of 3.5 to 3.75%.
This, to me, is one of the most stunning divides that we have. So, what do they say about the flag? Even on the basic level of flag, look at this. Look at how we have an increasing polarization on this issue. We'll display the flag on July 4th, the American flag. Back in July of 2001, look at this. You had 68% of Republicans, 65% of Democrats saying that they would, in fact, display the flag on July 4th. You come over to this side of the screen, Republicans basically are where they were 25 years ago, right? 64%. But look at that Democratic percentage, absolutely plummeting. Just 27% of Democrats say they will, in fact, display the flag on July 4th.
This morning, President Trump putting pen to paper inside the Palace of Versailles, signing the 14-point Memorandum of Understanding to end the war with Iran, alongside French President Emmanuel Macron.
This was not easy, I can tell you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We're here live on Real America's Voice. Today is June 18th, 2026, Anno Domini, here in the free United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, MAGA World Peace. We're talking about MAGA World Peace on the menu, and my gosh, my golly, my gee whiz, holy crow, as somebody very important used to say. President Trump has done the unthinkable. President Trump has done what they said was impossible. They said it couldn't be done. But President Trump right there in the Palace of Versailles itself, signing the document enshrining the current peace deal with Iran, it also ensures regional stability. And let me tell you something right now, the neocons are losing their ever-loving minds. The panicans are doing what they do. They are panicking. They are melting down, screaming, crying, throwing up, smashing their hands into any nearby drywall. I heard that one actually tried to pull his flat screen TV, it's told, from his wall, but he didn't have the upper arm strength to do so. But instead, he just sort of, shook his fist at it really hard and threw his Roku remote at it. There's very disturbing reports coming in, very disturbing. President Trump signed a peace deal. And now J.D. Vance, the vice president, is up there at the White House and conducting yet another masterclass. It's masterclass after masterclass from the vice president. Not only is he showing you how to deal with the harpies at The View, he is showing you how to deal with the harpies in the press corps, how to deal with the warmongers. And I think what he said to Israel was very important. He said President Trump is one of the last world leaders, powerful world leaders, who is sympathetic to the state of Israel. And so, to these Knesset members that are speaking out against him, they better think carefully about that. They better think very carefully about speaking out against one of the only world leaders that is still sympathetic to the state of Israel. Is this going to be a deal that satisfies everyone? No. And as Scott Adams told us, that was always the point. You're never going to get to a deal that fully satisfies every person in a coalition. He also would point out that you have to compare this deal with the immediate prior deal. You also have to compare it to the immediate prior status quo. You can't compare it to some deal that exists in far-off fantasy land. This deal is the best Iran deal that we have ever seen in our lifetimes. In our lifetimes. How can you possibly be against turning off these military operations, returning the focus back here to America first, and returning the focus back to the main quest of mass deportations from the United States? We need full remigration. Greg Bovino's out there talking about it, hanging out at the tomb of Vlad the Impaler. We need all of it. The neocons, they are losing their minds. And look, we are going to verify every piece of this. We're going to inspect. We're going to make sure everything is clear. You have the United States military, the world's finest Navy sitting right there, 2 aircraft carriers. We understand the score. President Trump understands the score. But that's why President Trump was elected. And if you don't like it, by the way, it's the United States. Go ahead and run for president here yourself. Jack Posobiec back, Human Events Daily. Just 1 second.
Stand in our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back. Live Human Events Daily. Real America's voice. Folks, right now, we know the headlines are starting to feel a little calmer. Oil's easing. Markets are reacting positively. And with this Iran deal, which may be temporary, may be permanent, we'll see. Everyone's starting to exhale. But when oil prices spiked, the dollar strengthened, and that pulled gold and silver back from their record highs. These are the exact calm moments that I start paying closer attention, not less. Because here's what I've learned. The biggest opportunities show up when everyone else gets comfortable. Headlines change, markets change, and the thing that nobody's worried about today has a way of becoming headlines tomorrow. That's one of the reasons that Tanya Tay and I, the beautiful and lovely Tanya Tay and I, became clients of Allegiance Gold, because we treat protecting what we've built as seriously as we treat building it. With gold and silver off their highs, the folks who've been waiting on the sidelines may have a window worth a closer look. If you've worked hard for your savings and your family's future, don't wait until everyone's rushing back in to pay attention. Find out how you can move a portion of your 401k or IRA into gold today, or put physical gold and silver directly into your hands, shipped discreetly straight to your door. Call 844-577-7676 or go to protectwithposo.com and claim your free wealth protection guide. It lays out what the herd tends to miss. And if you qualify, you may be eligible for up to $5,000 in free gold or silver on a qualifying investment. That is protectwithposo.com, or give them a call, 844-577-7676. So there's so much going on right now with one war ending, but I feel as though there's another proxy war that's begun. And that's the proxy war on J.D. Vance for 2028. And it's remarkable. You see this proxy war just coming out of nowhere, where people all of a sudden are all over conservative media, not all over, but big names, well-known individuals trying to cancel J.D. Vance, saying that he's not done a good job as vice president. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? J.D. Vance is the best vice president I've ever seen in my life. J.D. Vance is the best vice president that this country has seen since Teddy Roosevelt. Remember, Teddy Roosevelt was VP, and then McKinley was shot by an anarchist, by the way, anarcho-socialist, and that's how he became our president. No. J.D. Vance is phenomenal. And you look at what he did there. I got to say, for my money, The View is good. The podcasts he's done lately are good. But today in the White House press conference, that was J.D. Vance showing command. He commanded the room. It wasn't just back and forth. No, it was command of the room. And that's what I loved seeing. And yet you see these people that are just, they're crapping on him, they're attacking him. And there's foreign operations. You can go, and I'm finding on Twitter now, account based in West Asia says, I hate J.D. Vance. Really? Like, what do you mean? Some kind of bot or some kind of guy that's based in West Asia is all over Twitter, all over X, attacking the vice president. It's almost like, I don't know. It's almost like there's a proxy war going on for influence in the 2028 primary, the same way we saw this in 2023 for people undercutting President Trump. Someone who knows indelibly what I'm speaking of and all the history here, the backstory, and sees the tea leaves the way they are is Rich Barris, the People's Pundit from Big Data Poll. He joins us now. Rich, how are you?
Living the dream, brother. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Rich, so, before we dig into this, I do want to let people know that you and Joshua Lysek have an incredible new book that is out right now. It's called Burn It Down. What is this new book about?
Jack, it couldn't be more prescient, and people should go and pre-order it now. It'll be out September 21st. This fight over, and you just mentioned the proxy fight with the vice president, it's a perfect example. The debate over the war, another great example. This is about how we sometimes get a little bit comfortable and get a little bit complacent. But the truth of the matter is, a large part of what makes up the Republican base has changed considerably. And soon, that generation that's been in command of the electorate is going to phase out of the electorate. That is my nice way of saying that things happen. Father Time comes in, and all of us are subject to him. And what we'll see replace that is going to be radically different than anything we have seen before. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's victory in 2024 gave Republicans, gave the right-wing coalition in this country an incredible opportunity to seize control of it, to take advantage of it, build a strong coalition that can endure for decades to come. And if they don't do it, it's going to be more than problematic. It could seriously threaten the viability of the Republican Party as a national force. But if they do the right thing, if they pay attention and they stay the course, they'll dominate.
I think it's exactly right. And I commend you for putting the book out. But because, Rich, when I look at some of this, look, I was at the UFC event. I was walking around, I was talking to guys, and, I just sort of look anecdotally, right? So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by the exact type of low prop voters that the president needed in 2024, that you and me were talking about every single day in 2024, that Charlie Kirk was doing everything he could to reach out to turn out. Bruisewitz was getting the president on all those podcasts to try to get him at Full Send and, all the different shows. And J.D. Vance, the vice president, of course, was going on a lot of these shows as well. And I said, let's see what the UFC audience type guy, these masculine, toxic masculine individuals are talking about. And they said, we like Trump, we like the UFC, but what's going on with this war thing? Why are we doing this war? Right? It was like it wasn't so much that they were anti-Israel or pro any of that. It was just, why are we doing this? Like, what's going on? It's just confusion, because it seemed to be something that they did not think was in the cards. And I predict, and it's just me looking at it, that when this thing is done, and by the way, it doesn't surprise me, it certainly doesn't miss me, that the peace deal was originally announced on June 14th, the same as the president's birthday of the Army, the birthday of Flag Day, that's like the birth of the American flag, and the UFC event that peace deal was announced. Rich, do you think that the president is going to be able to bring some of those guys back on board? It certainly feels like he's making a play for it.
No, I do. And that, again, you know, you have these certain generational groups, right? So we're looking at a huge chunk of Gen X, which will be dominant very soon. And then everything from millennial down is filled with those voters. And there are only two things that are going to happen. You know, you're going to follow Donald Trump's lead, Vice President Vance's lead, and you'll be able to capitalize on that. Those attitudinally, Jack, it's not, again, I think a lot of people made this about, you know, whether people love or support Israel or don't. And to be truthful, these voters don't really give them that much thought at all. They didn't until what they perceived, you know, they came in and hijacked. This is how they perceive it. Hijacked their agenda, their presidency, because Donald Trump represented a complete course correction and an about face from the direction that prior leaders, including Barack Obama, have taken this country. And if you don't follow that lead, then you're going to end up going in reverse and regressing to the, you know, the pre-Trump Republican Party, which is represented by basically anyone but J.D. Vance. Let's just say it out loud right now. And they will lose, and they will lose badly. And those voters that you were sitting with, many of them will just not vote. They just won't show up. And even worse, many of them can be persuaded by new up-and-comers in the Democratic Party that are not part of the old guard, like the John Ossoffs, for instance. That's a dangerous guy right there. I hate to tell everybody, but they'll be persuaded by people like him who are basically trying to fake MAGA, give their own left-wing version of MAGA. In the book, we also bring up Mamdani. Folks, I think you'd be surprised how many Trump Mamdani voters there were in the New York City mayoral race. And that's because Mamdani said, listen, enough with Israel. Why is Israel dominating the race of a New York City mayoral contest? This is ridiculous. I'm talking about housing. I'm talking about affordability across the board, medical, everything. This is what people who run in office for this country should care about, not what is going on or the survival of another country or even the long-term, strategic security goals of another country that don't align with ours. It's that simple. It's nothing to do with whether they like the country or love the country. They didn't give it two thoughts, Jack, until we got here, which is why, again, I just want to reiterate what you said about the vice president. You know, God bless him. It's not without question, he's the best vice president in our lifetime. He's the most responsive vice president in our lifetime. The Roosevelt comparison I love. And, you know, when it comes down to it, a lot of the people who are criticizing him now are also the same people who criticize Donald Trump for picking him as the vice presidential nominee, when those of us who have a better grip on how the voters of this country think and what motivates them and what their goals and fears are, when those of us, you know, told them at the time and pushed back and argued, no, this is exactly what the president needed. He's the first millennial, Midwest, and he articulates, I mean, you saw him today at the press conference. It was massive. He did a phenomenal job.
Command
and
performance.
We're in the field right now.
J.D. Vance, the vice president at that podium today, it was a command performance. Massive. It was a performance that it was better than The View. It was better than any of these podcasts that he's done. That right there, from, I mean, the bully pulpit of the White House, it is what it is, with the red tie, showing command of the room, able to joust back and forth, but actually hold the room in the palm of his hand. That right there showed me that is, what can I say? That's heavyweight contention. He's a heavyweight contender, ladies and gentlemen. He's got what it takes for a shot at the big one. Jack Posobiec, right back, Human Events Daily.
You know, they talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, who's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. We're on with Rich Barrett. So, Rich, you know, I mean, you look at the presidential field in 2028. And you just have to say, J.D. Vance is main event status. He just really is. He absolutely is. And you've seen some of these people who are just shrinking back into the wallpaper as events do not go their way. And you've got these guys now trying to undercut the vice president because they don't like that their brand of conservatism, neoconservatism, is being put on the back seat. And President Trump has found this sort of third way between neoconservatism and isolationism, where it's just America first foreign policy. You know, we're gonna intervene, we're gonna poke, we're gonna dip our toes in where we need to, show power on the world stage, but also understand that when things have gotten to a certain point, you know, we cut the deal, we move on. And that's what the president understands. That's called leadership. Rich, as you're looking at some of the stuff, I understand you guys are in the field right now talking to voters. Love to hear what your responses are, if any, on the news of this deal.
Oh, they got thoughts, Jack. They got opinions. It'll be out Monday, Tuesday, but we did want to start early when this was first announced because we wanted to see how it changed, how opinions and preference sentiment changed as more became known about the deal and as the White House had a chance to sell it. So while we were in the field, instinctively you could tell that this was popular. And it, you know, to me as a pollster, I've been polling the Iran war before and after it started, the strikes last year. Instinctively, I figured that would be the case because the war itself wasn't popular. But over time, you can see it's getting the deal and the idea, the concept behind what Vance is out there selling as the president's vision and what he thinks, why are we doing this, right? While he's taking so much criticism, even from supposedly his own party, is growing. So support for it is growing, which tells you, any pollster knows, that tells you Vance is being effective and he's getting the job done. It started at one point, and I can give some away. I mean, it started at about like 60%. Yeah, I think I like this because ultimately I just want gas prices to come down. Foreign policy, as they have been telling us, is not their main concern. They didn't see this imminent threat from Iran. So the neocon wing never sold this threat that they tried to sell. We can remember some people being on their Fox Sunday shows claiming that Iran can not only send the nuke, they could send it to Chicago, Illinois. Like nobody believed that, which would be good because it's not true. But ultimately, as the vice president kept talking, we're now at like 70%, Jack, and we'll see where we end up. But let me just give you some numbers. The vice president had a commanding lead for the nomination, higher, it's historically high. It had tightened somewhat during this war to just, you know, he felt it just below 40%, where he's been as high as 55 in our polling. Now he's popping back up. His lead is growing. The second contender was Rubio during one period where he got into the low teens. He's receding again. But really, most importantly, because November is around the corner, the generic ballot is already tightening. It's nowhere near where it needs to be, but it's already tightening. And the president's approval rating is going to be above 42% for the first time in months in our polling. In months. And I got to tell you, throughout this war, the president's had a hard time cracking 40, let alone 42. I actually think, I don't want to give it away, but I think I'm looking at like a 10-point bump right here, Jack. That's crazy. We haven't even seen the details. Yes,
I'm 10-point bump for the president?
Not even kidding. Right now, it looks like, to me, if I had to estimate it, last time we were at negative 18. It was bad. It was looking bad. This is like negative 8 right now, which is insane. He could end up in the mid to high 40s with very much lower disapproval. During this war, his disapproval shot close to 60 in our polling. That's fatal territory. So the president course corrected perfectly, or perfect, you know, right before that happened. Thank the Lord. And he's going to, this is going to turn around to look like very typical second term incumbency, which is where you want to be. I mean, that's it. I mean, it takes time for a president after they leave that honeymoon. It takes time for them to fall, and that second term fatigue comes in. A war accelerates that. If he did reverse this, I don't think I can give you the last time I can. Yeah, I don't think there is an example. I really don't. Historically, I don't think you'll see a recovery like that. George Bush.
Would you call it, Rich? Would you call it?
Just never.
Would you call this a? Would you call this a peace bump?
Let's call it the peace bump because it's going to be a bump. The question is
the peace bump, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's call it
We
the
are seeing a
bump. I like
peace
that.
bump for President Trump.
Peace bump for President Trump. Oh, that's it. I'm done. I'm even going to use that on my press release headline, Jack, if you don't mind.
This is what I do, man. This is what I do. You ask everybody in the biz. You're like, who came up with that headline? Who came up with that title? It's like, it's all good, folks. It's all good. I just give them out for free.
Gravy. It's all gravy. Go ahead.
No, it's look, at the end of the day, it's about meeting the American people where they are. President Trump, look, he had this vision of being able to knock the regime out. He knocked them on their socks. There's no question. He took them out like Gagey and Tuporia, right? And the fact of the matter remains, he took out layer 1, he took out layer 2, and the regime is still in place. And I get that there are people who are saying, oh my gosh, how could they do that? But you go, look, they need to be able to reconstitute any stockpiles they have of missiles, of drones, right? He wound them down. So we're in a place now where the Iranians need time to lick their wounds, where the global economy is saying, hey, can we get on with this? We know where this is going to go. And if you're not going to put boots on the ground and completely launch into another one of these Iraq or Afghanistan style wars, which the president and of course J.D. Vance know about, that's not in the cards. So you make the deal, and it's the best deal possible. And in fact, a better deal than Barack Obama. And there's something about, we only have a minute left, man, but there's something about J.D. Vance being an Iraq veteran himself and having seen that up close and personal. You see this with D&I Gabbard, where, they know, right? They know what it's like being boots on the ground. They know what it's like to have to, be there as letters are being sent home. They know exactly what that's like. And of course, they know what it's like when caskets are brought home draped in the American flag. Rich Barris, where can people follow you?
We're everywhere, Jack, at peoples_pundit on X and on the gram. But of course, locals, peoplespundit.locals.com is always the best place, folks. All the best.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec. We will be right back here at Human Events Daily.
Jack. Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. We have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Now, we know that there's a number of trials going on lately with left-wing terrorism. We've seen this plot targeting UFC. We know that there was apparently a DACA recipient and legal alien who came here as a young child or came here at least as a minor, who has now been totally wrapped up in this. So that's something that we need to focus on. We know, of course, Tyler Robinson, his hearing will begin in about 2 weeks' time. But then Luigi Mangione, this is one of the biggest ones. And of course, he's the one who's built the largest following out there in the world. Very interesting. He is now calling for not exactly the insanity plea, but something along the lines where we're called that he was under emotional distress or emotional disturbance. I want to get in with Jonathan Alpert because he is the author of Therapy Nation and someone who has deeply, deeply understood these situations. And of course, he's also in New York, so it affects him directly. Jonathan, how are you?
Good, Jack. Thanks for having me on. And you're right. I see all the Luigi lovers here in New York anytime he's brought to court. So it's quite striking to see them out there. And now you have to wonder what they'll think. He's emotionally disturbed. That's something that I've known for a long time. You've known, and most people with half a brain knew that it would take a deranged person to murder someone over a grievance.
Well, and so when we look at this idea of emotional disturbance, I kind of think of it as like similar to the crime of passion sort of thing. Like you catch your significant other in bed with with somebody else, and then you respond to that because of of emotional disturbance. Is that what he's trying to claim here? Or is this something else?
Well, I'm no legal expert, but from what I understand, this spares him or this will allow a manslaughter charge as opposed to anything else. So, we'll see how it plays out legally. But yeah, I think it's some people might see it as a crime of passion. Maybe they excuse that. But I think the bigger story is, the people that have idolized Luigi Mangione, now what is it that they think? Does their thinking now change to something else now that they know, or at least the defense knows, that he's mentally ill and deeply disturbed, or do they remain fixated on him as a folk hero?
And so when we talk about this extreme emotional disturbance, and I'm looking at it again, we're told that some records that are going to be related to this are going to be released, that it's challenging, but and honestly, some people are pointing out that there's actually very strong, as we know, evidence tying him to, he's on camera. He's on camera. He's got a manifesto. He was found with a weapon on his person. So, the physical and forensic and the documentary evidence is quite strong here. And so him attempting this seems to be more like a legal ploy rather than him actually trying to point to direct emotional disturbance. But at the same time, isn't this the same thing that a lot of people have been doing in their personal lives? You see this new thing with like young workers where they say, I need a mental health day. And they're demanding that mental health days be given to them and claiming that they have a mental health issue when really they don't. They're just kind of falling back on that because they know that's, supposedly this unassailable shield that we're not actually able to judge in any way as it's been accepted now.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. We've seen accommodation culture run wild. It seems more evident in the young people in their 20s. They're not feeling well, so they know they can take a mental health day. They know their employer really won't fuss with that. I think the Luigi example is obviously much more extreme, but it has its roots in grievance culture, which I've talked about a lot on your show and other shows. Where people feel wronged by society, they feel like they're owed something from society, or they hate the rich, they hate insurance companies, and we see it play out in various ways. We saw a couple of weeks ago this whole micro-looting phenomenon that was all over the media, where people justified shoplifting from Whole Foods and other big corporations. So whether it's doing that or whether it's hating a health insurance company, it's all part of the same animal. My profession, therapists, are really into promoting this. They feel like their client is never wrong. It's always the world around them. So there needs to be a reckoning within my profession to try to make some changes with this.
Yeah, and I just have to say, it seems like Luigi Mangione is just another Zoomer claiming a mental health day. We used to tell people that, hey, that's called get over it. Grab a coffee, grin and bear it, and let's get back to work. I can't even imagine having been in the military and, this idea of accommodation. We have to accommodate everything. And they're even doing this in boot camp to a sense where I'm told that in some branches, they're even starting to allow cell phones and, all these other things in boot camp, when the whole point of boot camp is that it's to stress test you, right? It's a stress test before you can enter the military because it is that rite of passage. And the problem with accommodation culture is for any of these things, it's justifying things that we used to not allow, that we used to have standards against, whether it's shucking work, whether it's going into the military, you want to have a high standard, or if you are, I don't know, thinking that it might be a good idea to shoot someone in the back on the street, that you don't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, if you go back to COVID, that's part of where this came from, work from home. And we're so many years past COVID now, yet People feel entitled to work from home. Even companies that have a policy of at office, I see people trying to get shortcuts. I've had people ask me for a note so that they can work from home. And of course, there's absolutely no justification for that, so I don't provide such a note. I don't know if it's laziness, if people are just highly anxious because they don't know how to function in our society anymore. 20-somethings have problems, and even older people have problems interacting with even a maitre d' at a restaurant. I started to see a lot of this around COVID and shortly after COVID, enter into the mix technology. People are so used to being buried on their devices, they lose the skill or never develop the skill of interacting with a real human being. So we have profound problems in our society. Luigi Mangione is obviously a deeply disturbed human being, and hopefully he gets what he deserves, the punishment that he should get. And I think anyone that's looking up to him still as a folk hero really has to get their head examined. Here in New York, we now have a musical, a play about Luigi. You're showing it right there. I think it's absolutely crazy that people would celebrate a deeply disturbed criminal in this fashion.
No, and it's sick, but we have so many people now where you're combining all of these things that we know are sort of fads that we can track and that we can see. You, of course, have your piece out in the Wall Street Journal saying that therapy is a form of re-education. And I find this fascinating because it's tied to your book as well, where a lot of these things are coming out of the therapy world, actually.
Oh, yeah. And that Wall Street Journal piece, I thought of that idea because I received an email from a colleague where they listed, I think, about 15 different what are called social locators under their signature line. So their pronouns, of course, but then they listed middle class, white, this, that. I didn't even know what half them were. But instead of presenting themselves as a skilled clinician, they're putting out there these social identifiers. And then that translates into how they treat patients. They're hyper-focused on the color of a person, their sexual preference, instead of treating the actual mental health disorder. I've given examples in my book of patients who went into a therapist to try to get help managing their stress or anxiety, and they come out of the session feeling like they were made to feel like something was wrong with them because they're gay or because they're Black or Asian. So therapists have just drifted so far from what they should be doing, which is helping people with mental health issues.
No, it's exactly right. Jack Posobiec. Yeah. We're coming up on a quick break here. So Jack Posobiec, we're on with psychotherapist Jonathan Alpert. I want to come right back because we're going to dig into a little bit about another case, other coast, the Los Angeles arsonist. Stay tuned. Right back. Human Events Daily.
Call this the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Now, I wanted to dip in because we know that there's the LA arsonist, this Antifa arsonist who has been accused of setting the LA wildfire, or excuse me, the Palisades fires, that if convicted, Jonathan Rinderneck faces a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of 45 years in prison. Federal case. Incredible piece here where one of his passengers, this Uber driver with grievances, said that someone said that he seemed like an incel, an involuntary celibate, was driving erratically, wouldn't stop talking about how humanity was crumbling, talking about how there aren't any good women in the region, violent with his words. There are, some of the most memorable issues. And in fact, this guy was obsessed with Luigi Mangione and many, many things. And in fact, Mangione's own lawyers had to put out a statement saying that, listen to this, Mr. Mangione does not support violent actions and does not condone past or future political violence. And so Luigi Mangione is distancing himself from the LA arsonist. You can't make this stuff up. We don't claim him. And what was interesting, though, is there's a behavioral analyst who was testifying that he believed that this individual, Jonathan Rinderknecht, this is the LA arsonist, was experiencing something called expressive motivation, which is not goal-oriented and typically satisfies some need for the offender that only they can explain. Expressive motivation, which of course was then based in this grievance culture. I want to bring Jonathan Alpert back in. So Jonathan, when they're talking about expressive motivation, what does that mean? Does that mean that this is sort of an urge that they can't control, that has to come out through some sort of action? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, Jack, honestly, that sounds like a lot of psychobabble to me, and people just don't want to acknowledge that this guy was disturbed. He was a incel. Obviously, he couldn't connect with women. He hated society. I mean, if you're inspired by someone like Luigi Mangione, then, you've got some serious problems there. I mean, if you have trouble with women or dating, like, go speak to someone, get help, learn how to gain confidence, overcome your anxiety. I help people with that all the time. And to now see Luigi Mangione be this voice of moral reasoning is laughable. And maybe he should have thought about that before he gunned down the CEO.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, the fact that he's, of course, trying to distance himself just adds to the hypocrisy here and adds to the dynamic. But when they're looking at it, they're also saying that there's some of these actions when people who fall into these patterns, I suppose, exhibit where he was, there was some girl who didn't want to go out with him on New Year's Eve or broke their plan. So he's taking another phone, like a burner phone, and he's texting her from that phone and messing with her and trying to get back at her. And he kept this litany of grievances. And it just seems as though this is someone who, again, it has these delusions of grandeur. Oh, the whole world is against me. And rather than do anything to change himself, he wants to go and wage war against the entire world.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we saw with Mangione. He had great grievances against the health insurance industry, and he felt like it was doing harm to society, and he just couldn't find a way to handle it other than the heinous act that he carried out. So there are parallels, and I think the people who are praising Mangione have to realize that there are consequences of this, because there could be someone like this arsonist in California that hears about Luigi and feels inspired and feels like he too can take action and can, take revenge on society in the way that he did, which literally killed people and ruined California, a large part of it. So I think people need to be far more responsible. We see it playing out with how people talk about the president as well. Calling him Hitler, saying he's going to ruin democracy. I mean, it's all part of the same animal, and people really need to be careful about what they're saying, because this rhetoric, this language getting into the wrong head can have destructive consequences.
Well, it clearly does. And, here it becomes this idea that I'm going to teach them a lesson and I'm going to, come out at them. And unfortunately, I worry, though, that the problem is that these individuals are going to spread, that this contagion is going to exhibit more and more activity. Look, go through the list all the time, but we said at the top, this individual, Luigi Mangione, the cases are working through at the same time. Tyler Robinson, obviously another example of political violence, murdering Charlie Kirk. Out of this idea that he was defending his his trans lover, who, by the way, is set to testify against him and was given immunity recently, all the way up to the 3 assassination attempts on President Trump, including one, this guy was a Caltech adjunct, and this latest of the UFC attackers, who apparently there's a huge manhunt out because there was a whole cell of 23 individuals who were going to attack the UFC event, which, oh, by the way, I was at with my wife. And so when we look at all of these, when we put it all together, when we try to understand what's happening in our country, you've got this incredible roadmap that explains that the psychology is what ties all these together.
Yeah, and there's also, as you mentioned, a social contagion element to this, where, I mean, we see this spreading online like everywhere, and people just feel inspired to take action. The plans that were thankfully thwarted on the White House there, I mean, the mother, from what I understand, saw something that was a little suspicious. She turned it over to the FBI, thankfully. And, people just think that it's their right, it's their moral right to take action just because they don't like someone. I don't know about you, but I was taught when you have differences with someone, you talk them out. Not everyone has to think the same way as you. Try to accept people for who they are, meet in the middle. But that lesson seems to be missing now, where people are just so evil. And again, not to harp on this, but when we have politicians, people in the media who feel that it's okay to put out rhetoric, Trump is evil, Trump is Hitler, the health insurance industry kills people. This gets into the wrong people, and we're gonna see more of this. We're gonna see people feeling that it's their right to carry out heinous acts, to avenge such things, and to try to, in their mind, make things that are wrong right.
Yeah, or you have these leftists going up on the New York Times and talking about, Brian Thompson was guilty of social murder, and therefore, since that was social murder, a response to him is actually self-defense because you're in defense of others, because you're defending others from being socially murdered by the consequences of his healthcare policy. I mean, they're playing so fast and loose with morality. They're playing fast and loose with these ideas of murder, of culpability, of personal responsibility, and they're doing so to justify some of the most heinous actions that can possibly be taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a huge difference between social murder and actual murder. But even with Luigi Mangione, his big gripe was that insurance companies kill people. So the very thing that he was concerned about, he went ahead and did. It just makes absolutely no sense to a sane person. So I'm glad that the defense has finally recognized how deeply emotionally disturbed he is.
We will see. We'll see how it goes. Jonathan Alpert, where can people go to follow you?
People can see me on X at Jonathan Alpert, as well as Instagram at Jonathan Alpert.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.